Okay, so this is the May 16th, 2023 Velero community meeting for the US Europe-friendly time zones. And I'll be leading this today. So let's get started with status. Shubham.
Hey, Scott. So I've just been doing some PR reviews, design checkups, and whatever comes my side regarding CSI and stuff. That's it from my side.
Okay. Yeah, and I've also done some design review, or sorry, some PR reviews this week as well. But that's pretty much all I've done from the Velero upstream side this week. So let's just get into the discussion topics. So we've got a demo on the AKS backup built on top of Velero. Let's go ahead and do that. I will stop sharing. Okay.
Okay, Scott, I'll take it up from here and
Okay.
start. Hopefully you guys can see my screen.
Yes, I can.
Yep.
Okay, I'll be quick on the part of going through the demo video. It's a quick 5-minute demo. So I'll run through you guys. Just to quickly start with what we have built is Azure Backup in itself is a platform that we have internally within Azure to support different workloads and enabling backup capabilities for it. So it's already there for VM, for SQL, Azure Files, Postgres, blobs, and all. And within that same platform, we brought in the support for Azure Kubernetes service via Velero. So basically, what we have done is that Velero is now integrated with Azure Backup and the entire experience that we have, so that it enables the customers to back up their AKS cluster as they back up any other workload across Azure. And then they have that single glass pane of view of our product called Backup Center and the newer version called Business Continuity Center, where they can just go and have the UI experience to manage their backups, their policies, and the reporting, alerts, and monitoring entire experience. So that becomes available as a part of the backup center. Okay. Quickly highlight to how we brought in the implementation. So my idea that we did was that the Velero is now installed inside the AKS cluster as an extension. So extension allows the Velero pods to be installed, and then the extension connects with the Azure backup, and then the whole backup process runs for the customer in that context. So that's how we have enabled Velero inside the AKS clusters. Post this demo, we can get into it, how the enablement of the extension thing happened. Currently, right now in this context, the preview version that we have launched, our support is available for Azure disks. As you are already aware, the CSI driver that we have of our Azure Files doesn't support restore capabilities. So we are currently enabling only Azure disk-based support for backups. In time being, once FileShare has that capability enabled, we will make it available also for our customers. Now I'll quickly just jump into the demo, and it's a quick 5-minute demo to run through you how the entire experience end-to-end looks like. This involves installing the extensions, which will bring in the Velero pods. Then we'll configure a backup for a cluster and then perform a restore for that cluster. Let's start the demo for Azure Backup for AKS. In this demo, we'll cover 3 scenarios. First, I'll install the backup extension, then configure backup for an AKS cluster, and then I'll restore to an alternate cluster. So this is a cluster that I have pre-created with an application deployed in it. So it's a WordPress that I have deployed. You can see it's a namespace that I have created. I will be backing up. This is a deployment under that namespace. This is the underlying PVC and PV, which I'm going to go and back up of it. And then there's a load balancer which I've created, which allows me to access the website via this external IP under the WordPress app. So you can see this is the website. So now, first what I'll do is that I'll install the backup extension inside the cluster, which will enable it to configure backup and perform restore. So I'll go to the backup section of the AKS portal and click on the install extension button. Now, as part of the extension input, installation input, I need to provide a storage account and a block container. That's where the Kubernetes YAML files will be stored for this backup. Click on next and create. And with this, the extension will be installed inside the cluster. Now with extension installed, cluster is ready to backup. So I'll go to configure backup and I'll select the vault, which is the management layer for backup operations. This vault and cluster is already has trusted access enabled in between. I click on next. And now I'll show you the policy as per which the backups will happen. So it's a 1-day backup frequency and the backups will be retained for 2 days. Now I'll click for next and I'll specify the backup configuration. So I click on add. I'll name my backup instance. As I said, we are looking to backup only the WordPress app. So I'm naming it as WordPress backup and I'll select that particular namespace so that underlying resources only get backed up. So I'll do that. I can use some filters also with labels and I want to back up all the cluster scope resources secrets. Now I'll do validate. This checks whether the necessary roles are assigned to the vault and cluster to do the backup. Click on next. And then I'll click on configure backup. With this, a backup instance gets created. I'll click on refresh. And now you can see a backup instance has been created for this AKS cluster as per the defined configuration. Now within this backup instance, you can see all the necessary details that we had set up while configuring. You can see the storage account and blob container and the snapshot resource group. And now click do an on-demand backup. This on-demand backup will create a recovery point for this cluster. Meanwhile, you can see we had defined a backup instance configuration. So you can see the details here. This is the namespace that we had selected for backup and all the other settings and filters that we had applied. So those are visible under this section. Meanwhile, I'll click on refresh and now you can see my recovery point is getting created. So the recovery point is available. With this ready, now I can perform a restore to an alternate cluster. So whatever that I have backed up right now, my WordPress app, I'll restore it to an alternate cluster. Now I'll go to my alternate cluster. This cluster already has backup extension installed in it, but it doesn't have the WordPress app. So I'll go and show you to the namespaces section, and you can see there's no WordPress app namespace created within it. So from the backup recovery point, I'll restore the WordPress app in this new cluster. I'll go to the AKS cluster, the original cluster, go to the backup section. You can also do the restore process from the backup center. I'll go to the backup instance. I'll click on restore. This is the recovery point I'm restoring for. Now I'll select the cluster. Now I'll do the restore configuration. This is namespace I'm restoring. If I need to apply any filters, labels, API groups, only those resources will be restored. If I want to restore my resources to a different namespace, the cluster, or in case of conflict happens, to what option should I go for, skip or patch the resources. Once done, I'll again do a validate. This is again for the necessary RBACs. Now I'll click on restore. Once this is done, the restore process has been triggered. Now you can see the restore completed in 1 minute and 35 seconds. Now I'll go to the alternate cluster where I've performed the restore. I'll go to the namespaces and show that the namespace has now been created and my WordPress app is deployed. As you can see, the WordPress app namespace is created there. I'll go to the workload and the deployment is visible as it's deployed as part of the restore process. I'll go to storage and you can see the PVC and PV are there. I'll go to the services. So my load balancer is also deployed now. So it has an alternate external IP and click on it. And now you can see the website is restored as it is. This come to an end for the demo. Thank you.
Okay,
Next time.
so you got to see the demo for it in terms of certain items that we are working in the coming. So this is a preview solution that is out in public preview. We're going towards GA in some time. So as part of it, GA, we want to bring out the hooks that are there available within Velero. So we want to enable it as part of the AKS backup solution that we have so that app consistency for the customers can be brought in. Other than that, we have certain ideas. The Azure backup platform in itself has capability to enable ransomware protection.
So we are currently working on to integrating with that entire infrastructure so that the backups that get created can be protected from ransomware. And then following by that, we also are working on to enable the disaster recovery part of it so that the backups are available in a different region altogether, so that even if the primary region goes down, customer has backup in the secondary and they can enable it. So these are the certain items that we are looking at currently within our roadmap and thinking about going and building for our solution. In terms of you guys want to take a look at it, this is our documentation, a link I've provided here, so you can go and take a look at it, how it looks like, and can even go and try out a solution as it's available in public preview if you have a Azure subscription to take a look at it. Okay, so this is a quick demo that we wanted to bring out to the community, that the solution that we have built for AKS on top of Velero. So this is how it works and it looks like. Just a couple things in the video when you saw the restore process, although I started the process within the AKS portal, the backups are in no way tied to the life cycle of the AKS clusters. Even if the cluster goes down, your backups remain as it is, and you can utilize our backup center discovery endpoint to go ahead and restore it. And down the line, we're also introducing support for command line interface, and also that you won't even go through the UI experience. You can use the CLI or Terraform and all to perform backup. So that will also be available in time. Okay. In case any questions, something, please go ahead.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. I think when you were showing the demo, you were showing this from a single cluster viewpoint, right? So from a cluster, you could go look at backups and see what's there. Do you guys have a multi-cluster view where you can go to one place and look at all the clusters and which ones are protected, which ones are not protected? Obviously, trying to see if there's a gap there that.
So Satya, there's an entire, so as I mentioned, the experience that we are currently, in the demo part is through the AKS portal, because usually for our Azure customers, the way they deal with, they work it out is directly go to AKS portal, and it becomes easier for them to discover the backup experience. But the whole management part of backup still relies on Backup Center, where you have the entire at scale experience. So you can take a look at it and see all the clusters that are protected or not protected. So you can take a look at that. Okay, that view is also available within Backup Center, and along with it, any backups that you have created for any of the cluster within your subscription, you can take a look at it. So that multi-cluster management scenario is also available. So you have the view of entire set of clusters that you have within a subscription via Backup Center. So that is available. And then in Business Continuity Center, that is currently in preview, we are going to bring out newer elements also along with it, where you can at scale policy implementations and also will be there. So you can just enable a Azure policy, and then it will be backups will be enabled for a cluster in a single go. Okay, so these kinds of there. So multi-cluster management is there. It's part of our Backup Center experience.
Okay, awesome. And the Business Continuity Center is the one where you were saying that you could bring in third-party applications to provide similar, better services that we can plug into as well, right? I mean, that's
So Business Continuity Center is a fundamental idea that we are bringing, is that the customers can have different choices to protect their workloads within Azure. It could be VM, SQL databases, anything that could be there potentially. And the idea behind is that we will provide a single management layer, basically, or an experience layer on top of it, where customers can go and see protected instances, workloads, and all those details. And then on the back end, they can continue using the basically any third-party solution that they want to use to protect their clusters. So that capability will come in via the ABC Center. So within that, the Business Continuity Center will provide that to the customers.
Sounds good. That's it. You mentioned that you're installing Velero as part of the extension.
Yes.
So is this Kubernetes apps extension model through CNAB format? Because the reason I'm asking is we are actually in the process of building a CNAB extension that deploys Velero as well. Or I should say we deploying our Velero manager, not exactly Velero. And do we have to worry about any conflicts if both are, similar format and available through, I think your extension will just be natively available, ours would be available through Marketplace. So just trying to understand if there are conflicts that we need to work to resolve.
Anshul, I think in context with our extension, it follows the framework that Satya is highlighting, right?
So extensions, we have an internal team which provides us an extension platform of sorts. We don't directly rely on Kubernetes specific extension frameworks that they have. I am not fully aware of them, but as far as I know, we don't rely on them as such. We have our own infra inside AKS, which manages our extension or the life cycle of the extension.
And in terms of availability part of Satya, so just to highlight that recently AKS has come out with extensions and applications in a marketplace. So backup would essentially be available to the customers via that landscape also. So as you see from the experience, backup is available within the AKS portal as a first party experience for it, but we will also make it available within the marketplace for them. So as part of our discovery element of it. So we are trying to cover all the bases that are available to reach out to our customers in context of backup solution.
Okay, and you're currently just doing CSI snapshots, so non-CSI snapshots like for Azure files and stuff are not covered at this point, correct? And that would be...
Yeah, at this point, we are not moving towards us different. I mean, we're deliberately not moving towards a different solution to support AFS-based persistent volumes and focusing more on disk-based because CSI is the standard and we want to follow through with it. We are currently working with internal teams to get this enabled down the line so that we can bring out support for AFS or any future CSI driver that Azure comes out with, so that it comes with that inbuilt snapshotting and restoring capability so that backup for AKS can directly latch onto it. So we are deliberately right now hitting a pause on bringing the support for AFS or file share for time being, as we are working with the internal teams to get that particular functionality being enabled. Okay. That's the whole reason for it.
Awesome. And I saw a fairly elaborate roadmap. Thank you for sharing that, Rajat. How much of this is, roadmap on the AKS backup side? And I saw things like bring your own encryption keys and stuff. How much of this will get upstreamed for Velero itself? And
so certain set of elements that I brought out, like bring your keys and all, those are inbuilt platform support. So Azure, as I mentioned, Azure Backup in itself is a platform altogether on which we enable a different Azure workloads. So they have their own backup capability that comes in. So we utilize Velero's extension to enable backup for AKS. But the things like the ransomware protection and all those are something that are inbuilt within, these are baked in within the Azure Backup platform. So the extension doesn't provide those capabilities. It's the backup platform provides that capability. So there is a separation between those two, at least for time being. But within us, we will keep on working on to see what we can bring into the community also on this parts. So we keep that consideration also always in our mind.
And bring your own keys in that context is really bring your own keys for encryption at rest, not encryption in transit. Is that a way to be looking at?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. That clarifies the things. And I saw a bunch of questions on ARO from
I think Vishal has taken care of it. There are multiple flavors within Azure that we will, for Kubernetes, that we will start tackling in time being once we have our AKS solution out. So things like ARO or Arc-based Kubernetes clusters are something that are down the line our target to get them enabled for our customers.
Hi, so I was wondering, are you using an official Velero release images here, or do you rebuild or fork on your own side?
We rebuild them. We don't use it directly.
Okay, yeah. And do you have any local changes, or are you rebuilding basically a full release of a specific version?
We have like very, very minor changes, not like we are anyways pushing those features as upstream. For example, the volume snapshot class selection design that I was working over the last few months, that is something we needed. So we built for ourselves, but we are, whatever we build, we are just pushing to the community back. So
Got it.
nothing specific. It's pretty much vanilla.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Hi, I have one quick question. So is this only snapshot backup, or you can also select file system backup if you want? I mean, I didn't see a problem. I missed it.
Okay, yeah.
Well,
So that's what we're talking to Satya about this. So currently right now our backup solution for if you have an Azure disk-based PV, yes, we can take a snapshot of it. If a customer comes with a file share-based PV, we are not currently enabling that CSI driver snapshotting capability because that driver doesn't have restore capability also. Okay, so it can create a snapshot of that AFS PV, but it cannot create a restore for it. It cannot restore back an AFS from that snapshots. So currently right now we are focusing just on enabling the solution for Azure disks. Down the line, we're working with our CSI teams to get that capability enabled.
No, just a quick
I
clarification.
actually spoke with Rajat a couple of weeks ago, so I could probably answer that question. No FSB backup at this point. It's just
yeah. So that is my question, Rajat. I mean, it's not about whether you support or not, right? Even if I have Azure disks, maybe customers might want to do file system backup, right? Because you don't want to get tied to the snapshot. So that was more.
You have a separate AFS backup solution available from Azure Backup, so you can utilize it.
I don't think is
Yeah, I'm not.
I think you're answering two different questions here, Rajat. He was just asking if you enable Restic or Copia.
No, right now we haven't enabled
that's
Restic
part of
or
the roadmap.
Copia for it. Got it. We haven't enabled it. We are currently exploring those solutions, but at least for time being, we haven't. As I mentioned, we are trying to be dependent on the CSI driver capability more and focus on that.
Understood. Got it. So it's only snapshot backup at this point. Understood. Thanks. Yeah.
Hey Rajat, great demo. I just had one quick question. I think Anshul answered it, but still. So you did a cross-cluster backup, right? For snapshots, CSI snapshots?
Yes.
So did both the clusters have access to the storage, underlying storage, or like?
Yes.
Okay. Or else it wouldn't have in the case, right?
And then it won't happen if you don't have access.
Okay.
Yeah, we stitch all of those flows on the portal. All the permission flows kind of happen like a magic. We take care of them automatically when the customer goes for a restore.
Because the resources like volume, snapshot, content, and all that, if those get deleted, then you won't be able to restore, right?
Right, that is a separate problem too, and that we are tackling through a different solution. But in general, as of today, this is all operational tier is what we call. We just take snapshots and we restore from them, and it's mostly a permissions game for now.
Perfect. Cool. Thanks.
And this allows the user to do things on their own within the cluster, or only through the Azure portal, Anshul.
Only
nothing stops them
Azure.
to create a CR, Velero CR within cluster itself.
We don't exactly stop it right now, but I mean, we will plan to block it in the future. But the expectation is it has to flow from our backend. It has to come through REST API, portal, PowerShell, CLI, whatever they prefer. If they take any backups from inside the cluster, it does not reflect back to our backend. So it's like not a use scenario we support.
Okay.
At least for now.
But if you share the same storage location, then those might get synced, right?
If you, what is the question exactly here?
So if you create an in-cluster backup resource and the backup storage location, the object storage is shared, then you might be able to see in your portal, right?
No, I mean, our backend is not aware of it, right? So we don't care if customer is using Velero on their own, if we have installed it for them. We can potentially block them, but I mean, if they do it, our service is not really in the loop.
So you might have two Veleros in the same AKS cluster, but you guys won't be aware about the other Velero instance.
Yeah, we don't. I mean, as long as they share the objects, so it's up to them. But I mean, we only care about what is done in context of our backup. If a backup flows through our API, we take care of, we map that Velero backup to our backup. We don't care about anything else that customer might be doing there.
Yeah, I mean, there could be a concern if you had a different Velero installed in the cluster. There was a different version because the CRDs wouldn't match. So if you had two different, like if you had 111, maybe you installed 111 and they had 110, for example, already in the cluster. only one version of the CRDs is going to be installed because it's cluster scope. So one of those Veleros is going to have the wrong CRDs.
You're right. So we do recommend in that users do not have a existing well, because we don't really guarantee the existing installation to work. We kind of call that out. There's nothing else pretty much we can do here.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are deliberately not stopping our customers to have a multiple flavor of Velero at a point of a time. We're just giving them a recommendation to avoid it. Okay. So that's the only thing we're doing. We're not stopping our customers to not installing Velero, at least for time being, or any other backup solution if they want to use time being.
Just a quick comment about the cross cluster restore, and this kind of builds on what Shubham was saying. We also at Cloudcast have been working on similar cross cloud restore. So I just wanted to touch base on this. I guess what you're doing is basically creating the backup storage location to the cluster B, the second cluster, and let Velero sync all the backups and basically all the recovery points, and then proceed with the restore, right? That's what you're doing.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
I think Tiger had a question on plugins, KubeVirt plugin. If we want to support some additional plugins, what happens in this case?
So KubeVirt plugin, is this like a Velero? I'm not aware of what this is exactly. Maybe if you can give a little bit more context, that might help. Do you mean
I
that
think KubeVirt just allows you to run VMs inside Kubernetes, and it's to essentially create one API platform for managing both Kubernetes clusters as well as VMs. And there is a plugin to support essentially each VM runs as a pod, and it can have its own disks again within a cluster. And I think Tiger is just asking, how do we support a configuration like that where you may have VMs running inside large Kubernetes clusters?
So I don't really understand what, how does the backup behavior really change here if everything is considered a pod or a PV?
Because you'd be selecting backups at VM level. You may be selecting backups to do restores at the VM level, which again is a granular element within the cluster itself. Again,
I got your question, Satya. At least for time being, we haven't brought in support for this. Okay. As in case from our customer standpoint, also to highlight, we haven't gotten a requirement from them that they are looking to get such level of support within the AKS backup solution. But down the line, if we see as again potential to see if we want to enable such kind of a backup capability also where KubeVirt plugin is there and VMs are created in the clusters, then we will think about it to bring that support also in time being. But at least right now it's not there. As I said, the customer demand is not there for us to bring that kind of solution, at least for time being.
All good. Just for the record, that was Tiger's question. I was just verbalizing.
No, yeah, I got your point. I'm just trying to answer the question. Just
all good. We're on the same boat. We're actually exploring support for KubeVirt on our end, and it's turning out to be more work than we thought. But we're on the we're working through it on our end, so we completely understand the complexity around supporting it, and I think it's being pushed a bit more by Red Hat and SUSE than others at this point. But yeah, anyway, that's all we know about it. To be fair, I didn't see any other questions, and I'll shut up.
I think nothing else is there. Then at least from our end, it's done. Scott, you can take over for the next.
Okay, yeah, we'll go on to the next session. Let me share my screen again. Okay, and then we had some topics from Raghu. Let's see here. Oops, sorry. Here we go.
Yeah, can you click on the link?
Yep,
yeah.
we'll do. Okay, is that sharing or was it only a single tab? Do you see this one too?
No, I
Yeah,
see
we can
this.
see it.
Yeah, I
Okay,
see
great.
the GitHub issue. Right, my question is, I mean, this again, I was helping a user on the Slack, and this came up in that context. and I think somebody opened this PR. So shouldn't this change also be made in 1.11 and probably even before? Because if somebody goes to the docs and let's say clicks on 1.11, they wouldn't see this change, right?
Oh, I see what you're saying, because this was a change. When the feature came out, it wasn't documented properly, and so the
Right.
doc was added on main, so we got it in 1.11. So the question was, should we backport this to the, because this also affects what's on the doc site. I would say probably we should make a PR to extend this to any specific versions. Shivam, this was 1.9 that this came out, is that right?
Yeah, so I think it was there in 1.9. If it's missing on 1.10 and 1.11, I'll create a PR for this.
Yeah, so I think we do need to make sure the docs are consistent there.
Yeah,
I
sure
think that's a good point.
All right.
Okay.
The next one, next
Yeah,
one is
CSI
CSS
snapshot.
Right. We were working on this, and in fact, David, who is on this call from Cloud-Casa, he submitted a PR, but a question came up. So you can, if you scroll down, you can see a comment. Click on the link. So we didn't completely understand, so I wanted to ask you something. So in the current implementation, when I set the timeout, right, and it is the CSA plugin that constantly checks if the snapshot moved to ready to use state, and that's the only place, right? As far as I know, the main Velero binary and the application, it doesn't really check anything about the CSI status, right? Is that correct?
Shubham might be in a better position to answer that one.
No. So it doesn't, basically the only CSI code that resides in the core Velero is regarding the cleanup of snapshots.
Right. So that is my understanding too. So that is why here I didn't understand this comment at the end that says it will double the timeout. And it seems to be referring that there are two places in the code where the poll happens, but that I don't think that's accurate, is it?
In Velero core, you mean? Or
That's what this comment is saying, right? He's saying that's why there are two places that have the polling logic. Somewhere in the middle, you see that sentence. There are no two places with the polling logic, as far as I can tell.
There are actually two places where the polling happens. One is in the plugin, and one is after the backup is done when they upload the volume snapshot JSONs. It happens in two places. And we have already been tracking this, that this polling is kind of duplicate right now, right? So I think I will discuss with Xiang once more. It seems like the second set of polling, right, which happens post backup, can be removed pretty much, because it did not seem to add any specific value if we are anyways waiting for 10 minutes and going out. And there's another set of changes that we are already bringing in the plugin, where in case of failures, we clean the snapshot upfront. Like if a failure happens in the CSI plugin, we'll clean up the snapshot and exit. So that polling should not even ideally occur in the second time when it happens. It's in the core Velero code, just for your reference.
Where is the second one?
It's in the core Velero, not in the plugin.
The deletion part. That's what he's saying.
But that polling is not for ready to use, right?
No.
It is not. Yeah.
Right. So this issue is only about the ready to use flag. I mean, when the snapshot is ready, right? So that second polling doesn't apply here, as far as I know, right?
But what Shun is trying to say is the parameter that you are using, right? That is the timeout parameter that is used in that polling. The value of
maybe, but as the name suggests, right? It says CSI snapshot timeout, and that should get used in the plugin. Tomorrow, if we decide that the second polling, whether it's there or not, should use a second parameter, seems to me to be a separate issue. In any case, can you guys look at this comment and maybe you can post and we can discuss?
Right? Sure thing, Raghu. I'll try to add some thoughts on
that.
Yeah. I'll also ping Xiang. I think I had an in-depth discussion with him around this, because we were anyways tackling the performance issue in CSI around PIA and two sets of pollings. So what I'm planning to propose to Xiang is that the second set of polling, we try to remove it completely if possible. And this timeout specifically, right, I feel that it should be honored in the plugin, because end of the day, that polling will remain no matter what. That is what.
That's my point. Yeah, that is exactly my point on
one polling will remain no matter what.
So that polling will anyways be the CSI one, and that should honor the 10 minutes thing. I mean, it's we ourselves raised this, so I'm kind of aware of this issue. But yeah, that is hard coded to 10 minutes today in the CSI plugin, which should be instead be like taken from the parameter. So, so this fix, I think we should take ahead, and the second fix of removing the second polling, that I will take up with Ziyang, and we can try tackle that separately.
Yeah, another
Yeah,
thing would
so
be-
my fix is making this timeout not to be fixed, but it's actually using the parameter in the CSA plugin.
Okay, thank you for that, David. Another thing that's going on is there might be some modifications to the CSI plugin because of the data mover feature. So that's why they might be holding out on this. So maybe we could discuss it on the PR itself if they are trying to incorporate those changes in the
Possibly, yeah.
CSI V2 plugin.
Right, but my recommendation would be to fix this and backport to 1.11 because this is sufficiently important. Not hold this for 1.12.
True.
Features. I mean, I was really surprised when this, and I'm sure people must have run into this as well. So I think it's important enough to be backported to 1.11. Yeah.
100%.
Okay.
Okay.
I have the other things are just quick questions. So again, in the context of this issue, for example, I know that David is going to work on this. Who can assign the? I'm sure some permissions are needed. How does this thing work currently? Like who can assign?
So the issue assignment's not really. I mean, that's been kind of case by case. I mean, certainly for maintainers, people tend to self-assign things they're working on. I think if there's an issue that someone in the community is going to work on, I think basically, if you talk to a maintainer and get them to sign it to you is probably the best course of action here. If there's some question about who should work on it, then we can have the discussion. Usually if someone wants to work on it, that's fine. They're going to work on it, unless someone else is already planning on doing it for something they need, which is often not the case. So there's not really a huge formal process around it. I guess is what I'm saying.
Right. I mean, so maybe if you're going to work on it, we can just post a message saying we'll work on it, and maybe some maintainer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just I say post on Slack and say from this, could you sign this to me, and then kind of go that way. In the Velero Dev Slack channel.
There is a separate Velero-dev Slack channel.
Exactly. That would be the right place. The Velero users is more for user questions. So if I'm using Velero, I'm having this error. Help me out here. Velero Dev is the place where we tend to have those maintainer level discussions and community discussions around feature development and bug fixes.
Oh, okay. I'll post a message there then. In that case, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good. And the next question again, all came in context of talking to some people on Velero user Slack. So I just want to clarify the current semantics around this. So if I set both these snapshot volumes flag to true and default file system backup to true, which you can certainly do, right? These are just completely independent flags. There's no validation now in the code.
Right.
What is the expectation there?
So those really control different things. Snapshot volumes says basically if Velero would otherwise, and Shubham, correct me if I'm getting any of this wrong, as I understand it, snapshot volume says, okay, if Velero was otherwise going to snapshot a volume, setting it to false tells Velero don't do that. So that doesn't control backup method. That just says, hey, skip the snapshotting because we're not doing that for this backup. The default to file system backup, that has more to do with the decision, because basically anytime Velero has a volume to back up, it's going to take one of two options. It's either going to try to do a snapshot or it's going to try to do a file system backup. A file system backup can either be Restic or Copia depending on how you've configured it. A snapshot backup is either going to be a CSI snapshot or a native snapshot, again, depending on how you've configured Velero. So if you have a combination of volumes, say, for example, you're normally using CSI, but you also have some NFS volumes that you obviously can't use CSI for. If you have mostly CSI volumes, you'd probably want to set the default to FS backup to false. And then for those volumes that you can't use CSI snapshots, you would set a pod annotation on those to say use snapshot and use Restic Copia instead. Flip that around, if most of your volumes are ones you want to use Restic for, then you would set the default to FS backup to true. And then if you had a volume that you wanted to skip Restic because you could use CSI for or native snapshots for, then you would set a pod annotation for that volume to say, don't use restic here.
Right. So yeah, so there are quite a few combinations. I definitely understand that. But if I set both, should we do anything in validation?
But
and
I don't think so, because the reason is that the default to FS backup doesn't say whether or not we're backing something up. It doesn't say whether or not we're snapshotting. It just tells Velero this is the default mode, and we change it on a per volume basis to the other mode. So in other words, that's used for deciding, which backup method to use. The snapshot volumes selection is basically turning off snapshot selection completely, or snapshot backup completely. So they're really triggering two different kinds of reactions. So those are, in other words, you could set any combination of those and it would still make sense, because you could say, if you don't want any volume backup, then you would probably set snapshot volumes to false, and you would not set default volumes to FS backup, because that way no
Right.
PV data gets backed up.
Right.
But you may want to turn off snapshotting, but still use restic or copia for selected volumes, or things like that. So I don't know if there's any backup level validation that really makes sense to say, some combination of these two Booleans is, nonsensical, because since they control two different kinds of behavior, there are probably edge cases for both, for any combination.
Okay. I mean, in our quick test, in a couple of cases, when we do both, when we enable both, we see a snapshot being created and also restic backup being done for the same volume.
That sounds like a bug, to be honest. And Shubham, have you seen this? As far as I understand, Velero will not, and from what I've seen, this is true, but again, I'm not saying that there's not a bug here, but Velero should be only doing restic if there's not a snapshot backup for a particular volume.
Yeah, if you set up the flag default volumes to FS copy, then only restic backup should be done.
Unless you override with annotations.
Yep,
But when you override with annotations, then you're not doing the restic backup, you're instead doing the snapshot backup. So for any given PV combination, there should only be either a snapshot or a restic or copia.
Okay, that answers clearly my question. So if that is not happening, then that should be a bug then.
Yeah, if you're seeing both happening, that's either a bug, or it may be that the logs are confusing and not describing properly what's happening.
Right. I mean, in the describe output, we clearly see that CSS snapshot as well as the restic backup are done for the same PV, but we will definitely confirm and post more details.
Okay, great.
All right. And the final thing, again, somebody asked it for this, and I thought even some time back that this is a reasonable request. Is there any particular reason to back up empty dir PVs in the file system backup?
I don't really have a lot of background on that particular issue. I've noticed this myself, and I mean, in terms of in practice, I'm not really sure.
I mean, these are, by definition, these are transient volumes. When the pod goes down, you lose all the data, right? So I don't know if there is makes any sense by default to back this up.
Yeah, that might be worth having opening an issue on and having a discussion around it. And I think this is one of these things that, there's nobody currently working on Velero that was on the project when that decision was made. So I certainly don't have any insight on this, because this is behavior that predates my involvement in the project. And since I think I'm probably the longest standing person involved in this project regularly at this point, pretty much nobody currently working on Velero was working on Velero when that decision was made. So it's possible to revisit it. We can talk about pros and cons, see what makes sense. Should it be configurable? Should it define as is? But I would say open an issue to discuss it.
Okay, sounds good. I mean, at the very least, there can be a switch if possible. But yeah, we can discuss in a separate issue. All right, that's about from my side. I think I had enough, I guess. So yeah.
That's all good. Does anybody else have any issues to bring up? Yeah, it sounds like no, we're almost we're running low on time anyway, so I think it worked out well. So that will be it for now. Next week we'll have the meeting time 8 p.m. US Eastern, 8 a.m. Beijing, or is it 7? Yeah, that's right. And this time in 2 weeks. So have a great week, and ping us on Slack if anything else comes up or create an issue.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you.